Het is 17 januari 2019. Welkom bij Potkaars. Ik ga het doen in het Engels. It's January 17th, 2019. Welcome to Potkaars. This is a Potkaars. Potkaars in Dutch is pot with candle. In English it's just a regular podcast. That's what this is. This is a podcast about whistleblowing. In a few moments I'm going to show you parts of an interview that Raymond Johansson made with Thomas Drake. And that interview was made in May 2018. And Drake goes into what's happened to him when he was whistleblowing on the NSA. Now Drake went by the book. He was working at the time at NSA and followed the guidelines set for whistleblowers if you want to enjoy whistleblower protection. Now he explains that he was met with intimidation and bullying, threatened with prison sentence of up to 35 years nonetheless, even though you play by the rules. Now, Drake also goes into the situation of another whistleblower, a lady called Reality Winner. Reality Winner exposed an internal document that goes into the alleged meddling by the Russians of the United States elections in 2016. Now, at the time of the interview that Drake gave, which was May last year, she was not yet convicted. And he explains that the intimidation that she's met with is not unlike what he's experienced in his time as a whistleblower. She was later convicted in August last year to a sentence of 5 years, which under that law is the highest sentence ever for what she did. Now, Reality Winner was awarded, if you will, a prize by a free speech group called Blueprint for Free Speech. And they have a website, blueprintforfreespeech.net, and they're on Twitter. And tonight, another whistleblower, John Kiriakou, will be discussing this, among other things, with Ed Snowden. So you can watch that as well. Now, Ed Snowden is the whistleblower who exposed the NSA wrongdoings, not following the rules, if there are even rules for whistleblowing. But he took the information, went to Hong Kong and exposed it through the press. Now, by doing so, gained a lot of attention, got my attention as well. And I see Snowden do his thing, Greenwald do his thing, and go, these are cool guys. They're heroes exposing wrongdoings. Let's grant Snowden asylum, or at the very least, come to his defense. Now, what Snowden also managed to expose is the reaction of my own government in the Netherlands by not responding, not offering asylum, or not coming to his defense. And that made me do stuff like now create this podcast. So whistleblowers have all kinds of positive effects, if you ask me. And tonight, John Kiriakou will be discussing with Ed Snowden the situation of Reality Winner and other things. Enjoy Thomas Drake, and hope to see you tonight on that live stream.
My name's Thomas Drake, and I'm a former senior executive at the National Security Agency. And while I was there, shortly after 9/11, I ended up blowing the whistle on a number of things, including the incredibly secret mass surveillance regime that was unleashed with the approval of the President of the United States. And I also blew the whistle on massive multi-billion-dollar fraud, waste, and abuse, and 9/11 intelligence failures. And for that, I was severely retaliated against and ultimately was charged under the Espionage Act in 2010 in rather public fashion under the Obama administration, and faced 35 years in prison for having exposed crimes of state. And yet, by virtue of having done that, I had been turned into an enemy of the state. And it took 14 long months to face down the state, and ended up going free in a plea agreement in which they dropped all the felony counts. It became a very public case. It was the signature Espionage Act case under the Obama administration, one of many that took place after I was so publicly and deliberately indicted. And of course, it was designed to send a very chilling message. Don't speak up, don't speak out against power, because we might just hammer you. Ironically enough, what I pled out to, it was on my terms, was under the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act for having done what? exceeding authorized use of a computer. And so I had 240 hours of community service and 1 year probation, but I remained free. So I've dedicated the rest of my life to defending life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Charging someone with espionage continues under the Trump administration. And we know publicly there's been 2 cases to date. The first one, and this is an egregious case, is Reality Winner. I actually identify very closely with Reality by virtue of having served myself in the Air Force. I myself was a cryptolinguist when I used to fly reconnaissance missions and actually was involved in electronic warfare. Both the language side, listening in on the communications of others, but also the technology side. She allegedly disclosed a document showing interference by Russia in the U.S. election system, and for that, not only has she been charged under the Espionage Act, she is literally sitting in a county jail in Georgia, in the state of Georgia, United States, without bond or bail, has effectively been indefinitely detained awaiting trial. In my case, at least I was able to stay home under severe restrictions, but in her case, they've actually thrown her in jail. And it's an incredibly egregious case. I continue to bring as much light on it as I can, but the mainstream media and others are choosing not to touch it or skirting around it. I just find it's an incredibly gross travesty of justice. Effectively, they've taken away even her due process rights. And is to answer your question directly, yes, it's continuing to send a very, very chilling message. If you decide to go to the press, and this is directly related to my case and many, many others, you are probably committing espionage as far as the United States government is concerned. And if it rises to the level of national security and we're severely embarrassed by it, or you're disclosing what may in fact be the truth about the abuse of power, or revelations about power, or the fact that apparently the United States, with all of its vaunted technology, was unable to fend against foreign intrusions, alleged foreign intrusions, in this case in the heart of our democratic system of governance here, we're going to hammer you and hammer you good. And of course, if you're Trump, it'd be rather embarrassing to know that, for all of his public pronouncements, he wants to make an object lesson of Reality Winner. And this is taking it to the next level. This is effectively treating her as an enemy combatant, although she's a U.S. citizen, and as I did, but as she did, she faithfully served her country in an area and with languages that are truly needed. And I'm well aware of the language she learned in terms of that part of the world. You're talking Afghanistan and Pakistan. And yet, because she decided to become a truth teller and allegedly went to the press with something she came across that alarmed her and did so in the public interest, she's turned into an enemy of the state. But I think this post 9/11 security world clearly control, power, and attempting to basically label people and profile people who dare speak up or speak out, including protected rights with regards to free speech and expression and association, are under attack. I myself, I went to the press. I ultimately did go to the press in the public interest, and for that, I was labeled an enemy of the state. I was a Benedict Arnold. I was a traitor, etc. I would have the blood of American soldiers on my hands. I was a really bad dude, right? And so you get painted into a corner. I think it's both. I think it's both a sign of the times, as well as, and I think, as well as the government and or say organized state power using its own levers of power. Particularly the powers of police, law enforcement, and secret national security services to go after people, monitor people, and then for those who they are particularly take more umbrage over in terms of their exposures of abuse of power, make some object lessons of them. And I can tell you, it's withering. It's withering to come under the ambit of the state and become a target of the state and have your life literally turn, inside out and upside down. It's not a pleasant experience. But that has also been the case with those who dare to organize, dare to associate one to another, whether it's directly. We've seen that ourselves. There's still ongoing cases, even involving journalists in protests in D.C. Regarding the Trump administration. We saw that with the Occupy movement. We also saw state power and their associated proxies infiltrating many of these movements. And then you get into this whole issue of trust. How do you trust anybody in this environment, and how do you organize in this environment? Becomes extremely challenging, particularly when you're using tools of technology that are also fraught with all kinds of insecurity that make it much easier for state power to keep track of people and organizations, whether they're organized in a more traditional manner or hybrid, or whether they're more underground in nature. Well, if my own experience and others is any indication, and if you still, the courage to stand up as a truth teller or whistleblower and provide information to press and media in the public interest, your protection becomes absolutely paramount. And that's not just being prudent, but that's also a responsibility on the part of the press. So if that's one example, then if you're organizing to resist, or if you're organizing to protest, or if you're organizing to bring light on a larger scale, not just as an individual, because in many respects, individual truth tellers and whistleblowers are really the sort of the proverbial canary in the coal mine. We're sort of the final defense in terms of warning the public of what is going on. And this takes place at all levels of society. Some of us, like myself, we're exposing literally crimes committed by the state at the very highest levels, up to and including the President of the United States, and they were doing so in absolute secrecy, in total violation of the laws of the land, privacy protections, Fourth Amendment in this country. Who cares about your individual rights? National security reigns supreme. So you have this drift toward autocracy and authoritarian tendencies, which is extraordinarily alarming. So in this environment, it becomes even more challenging to organize in a way that's more secure. It becomes even more challenging to organize in a way. How do you communicate so you're not exposing yourself, especially in the planning stages? How do you protect yourself from those who want to know, especially those who want to keep track of you because they're afraid, they really are, and don't want you to do so in the public interest? How do you protect yourself against their ability to hack you, infiltrate you, profile you, track you? That requires a much more secure platform. It's a platform that has to be distributed in a decentralized manner, even if you're organizing in a more localized manner, or if it's localized across the globe, depending on the movement, depending on the focus, depending on the interest. This is not easy. It's not easy at all. And the traditional means by which you organize come up way short in what I call the golden age of surveillance. I spent a lot of time both in public as well as in private, on the record and off the record, discussing these critical issues. Look, I was an organization of one and stood up from within the system and ultimately went outside the system. And even in the system, I was tracked and profiled. It's extraordinarily difficult, especially when these same instruments of state power have direct access in many cases through secret agreements with telcos and IT firms, service providers, owners or operators of fiber optic cabling systems on a global basis, as well as data brokers. The breach of surveillance is extraordinary. So in this milieu, in this environment, I believe what is crucial is to have a combination of secure or more secure communications. So I will say nothing is absolutely secure, but more secure communications, while at the same time you enable the ability to collaborate across multiple domains or within the same domain around the world. And that, having a very technical background myself, that combination is probably what's emerging now as a critical platform. The need for that kind of a platform, more critical now than ever. It's one thing to have secure communications or more secure communications through some of the various technologies that are now much more available, even on, even just right on, in the palm of your hand with a mobile device, right? It's a more challenging to combine that with a platform that also allows you to organize and collaborate and communicate on more than just a 1 or 2 or 3 person basis, and still maintain the necessary trust credentials, the necessary checks to preclude infiltration. I mean, there's a famous cartoon, I must share this because to me, it continues to be a huge issue in this space technically. There's that famous cartoon, a New Yorker cartoon from the 1990s when the internet sort of exploded the public consciousness, although the internet had been around for a while. There's a dog sitting in a chair looking at a CRT, a cathode ray tube, on top of a pizza box computer and a keyboard. And there's a little dog looking up at the big dog sitting in the chair, and the big dog's looking back down at the little dog saying, "No one knows you're a dog on internet." This is a fundamental issue. The credentialing, if you're anonymous, how do you know your trust? Although anonymity is critical in this space as well when it's absolutely necessary. I'm well aware of what that means. But how do you protect yourself at the same time? And if you're collaborating, oh my gosh, that's a word thrown around in my case. Oh, a collaborator. Somehow you're organizing against the state, which means you're a bad actor, and we've got to take care of bad actors. But how do you then coordinate and collaborate in a much more secure manner without revealing yourself or being exposed or having the risk of being infiltrated at the same time? These are not easy. We're right now participating, via a technology called Zoom that I would not consider that secure. Okay, I just don't. There's many platforms. As wonderful as this is, seeing you on the other side of the screen, all right, about 5-6 time zones away, right, in real time at the same time, right, all right, and it's a little brighter where you are. Morning is just now dawning here as the sun comes up over the horizon. This is a rather insecure platform, right? So it makes it easier to communicate when it's less secure. But this is the fundamental challenge in this space, because anything that's open means that you have to automatically assume that it's already compromised. I'll use a word, although the government said I was self-radicalized, a more radical vision in terms of how do you combine the best of investigative journalism, resistance, protest movements, activism on a platform that provides good enough, and I'll put that in quotes, good enough communications, that's good enough encrypted communications. I recognize there's various encryption protocols, some better than others, but on a platform that's also has good enough security that allows for collaboration and communication and organizing in a way that's also still decentralized. And that's where things like mesh networks, as opposed to centralized servers, and I'm getting a little bit more technical here, but are become much more important, particularly against the backdrop in the context of surveillance by extraordinarily organized state actors and proxies. it's really ironic for me. It's ironic to know that when I was in the system, and so say the Leviathan of state power from within, we had many, many types of platforms that were quite secure, and we engaged in all kinds of collaboration communication and encrypted video systems around the world, thousands of miles apart, right? And we knew we were doing so without having to worry about somebody infiltrating or because it was dedicated systems. It was even using what we know as the public internet for many of those communications, just having a special tunnel through it. And it was end to end, all right? So, but we knew that the ends, which are always the most vulnerable, beyond just man in the traditional man in the middle attacks, MITM, we knew that at an end-to-end basis, we had more than just a reasonable expectation of security, okay, distinct from privacy. We weren't really worried, right? Because the system itself that were designed for that provided it. We need that type, right? We need that type. I say we, and I do say we because I certainly promote the critical need, especially in this drift toward authoritarian tendencies, including the United States. It's crucial that people are, in fact, continue to organize and communicate and associating without the fear or risk that they will be exposed, or the fear or risk that they will essentially have all of their communications made transparent. Now, I'm also well aware that by virtue of using encrypted communications, by virtue of using more secure platforms, the assumption is on the part of state powers that you're up to no good. Why would you be doing this, as I was accused of, by virtue of using encrypted communications, in this case, with a person from the reporter from the press? You must be sharing, state secrets. You must be up to no good. And because we don't know what you're doing, we're automatically assuming you are a suspicious actor / character, a person of interest, or even worse than a person of interest. We consider you a threat. In fact, so anybody, by virtue of using encrypted communications, can be easily declared a threat by the state as an excuse justification to go after them. So it's crucial to have this type of platform. And I have not, to answer the question very directly as I come back around, and circle back to the beginning, it's crucial to have a more integrated platform, but not centralized, and also provides good enough security and allows for freedom to associate virtually with others and at far less risk than has been to date. And I just have not seen, so I'm actually intrigued by, although I'm approached by many, many groups, and I don't advocate directly or put my name on it. I'm aware that there's others in my extended network who will say, hey, use this platform or use this particular app, right? There's a variety of means by which we can communicate, but to put that together on a platform, I think I find that not just intriguing, I find that has become a much more critical need in today's world. I've seen too many advances, especially post 9/11, sort of this, as we slouch toward dystopia. I don't want to go there. I've been there personally as well as others, because what's the purpose here? The purpose is organizing against the abuses of institutional power and beyond, whether it's government or institutional. This is critical. I can't emphasize how crucial it is that people continue to associate and stand up for the rights of all of us. I mean, I've seen too many rights taken away. I saw what they attempt to do to take my own rights away. That's all I had left in the end was my own individual inalienable rights. And they wanted to take those away as well, and as the final form of punishment. And they did a pretty good job of it, right? Those are precious freedoms. Those are precious rights. Those are precious liberties. And yet I know it makes it much easier. You can isolate, like they're doing with Reality Winner. Reality Winner, she has no voice. We have to be her voice. So how do we give her a voice? Well, one of the ways we give her a voice is to organize. But we can't organize in a centralized manner because that makes it far too easy for state power and proxies to monitor and go after it. And you don't want to be wide in the open. Obviously, there are means even in the open. I'm on social media. My primary platform in terms of more public social media is Twitter. But certainly, if you're not going to be organizing on Twitter, all right, because that's too obvious, right? And many other platforms are way too obvious. The last place you're going to organize is on Facebook. Okay, so you have to have another type of platform, and I have not seen, although I've been asking for it. I always, no matter where I am, I have a tech conference that I'm actually speaking at, and then I'll be at RightsCon on the Pursuance Project panel for a discussion about these topics in terms of organizing in this age of surveillance. And against the backdrop of my own experience, right, having been on the receiving end of abuse of power, because I was calling out abuse of power. I'm going to a tech conference where I'm giving a keynote. I am actually going to be politely holding up a mirror. Unfortunately, there are those who are simply making tremendous amounts of money off of this, and they don't care about the rights or privacy of others because they would rather just sell to whoever wants to, buy the technology that makes it really easy to surveil and monitor people. To me, that's anathema. It's absolutely anathema to who you are as human beings. Why would I want to see individuals in society fragmented by virtue of power wanting to rule and control others? It's all about people control. That's the whole point. It's social control in the end. And by isolating people, Reality Winner is just one, unfortunately, it's a continuum here, particularly under Obama, now moving into Trump, where and it's true, it sends a message. I can tell you many people, because of my own case, absolutely shut down. They will simply be compliant and just follow whatever the orders of the day are. That is not the kind of world that I wish to live in or wish to live in with others. Because the past is where we draw lessons from. And then as a famous philosopher once said, if you fail to learn a lesson from the past, you're doomed to repeat them, which is a channel that particular philosopher. We often forget, right? The history of our own humanity is not all kind or pleasant. I spend too many hours a day having history screaming in my ear. In fact, in stereo most of the time. So how do you organize an ecosystem or create? Basically, it's really building a sustainable ecosystem for a future that we want to keep. And it's certainly not authoritarian, and certainly it's not autocratic. It's what I consider to be the highest and the best of human beings. It's just, unfortunately, there's too many forces out there that prefer to rule and have control over others, including societies that are ostensibly democratic in nature or who tout the principles of democracy, and yet underneath all that, there's this whole other form of power that certainly is eroding it right from under, right? I mean, I certainly confronted that myself. An alien form of government that was willing to set aside those extraordinarily precious rights to protect us against what? Against the very abuses of organized state power. And the power of state actors and their proxies. So, I mean, this is what's at stake for us. And if we're in this together, if we the people, right, then we also have to organize. And I believe the best sort of the analog world, which I do prefer to live in, when it comes right down to it, and the digital, I think there is a model here that's emerging, and it's very possible that the Pursuance Project is onto something, given some really hard lessons and ordeals that a number of us have gone through, and others who have been standing up like yourself and others dealing with all this and dealing with state power and dealing with surveillance, both on a personal and collective basis. I believe that there is something here, and I look forward to having further conversations about what that really looks like. Ultimately, it is a platform, but this platform cannot be anywhere. It can't look like any traditional platform. It just can't. It really has to provide the means by which. I mean, this is sort of, you say, call it the underground. You want to call it. I've had some really interesting conversations in the past with Brigida. She's used an interesting phrase called liquid democracy. Water is a universal solvent. It dissolves a lot, but it's also a carrier. It also is a conductor. That's how I look at this. I look at this as a very flexible, decentralized system. Some say salt of the earth. You want to do it, so that's another one. But salt also, look at the oceans, right? There's all kinds of salt dissolved in the oceans. So how you move all that, right? How you and being able to do so on the fly, right? So when necessary, you can bring to bear. And only remember, it doesn't take a majority. It only takes a very focused minority to make a difference. And part of the difference is, in fact, informing the public. Part of the difference is, in fact, organizing in terms of resistance and opposition. Part of this is being able to quickly not just form messages and not just send messages, or not just have people clicking or liking or retweeting if you're in Twitter talk, but also, in fact, organizing in a visible way that makes that difference. There's just too much at stake here. I just have seen too much erosion of rights and freedoms and liberties around the world. It is very troubling, and we've already had some very dark chapters in rather recent history. You don't have to look too far back to know what's possible and what people are capable of in terms of injustice against others. That's why, hopping up and down that long arc of history, both individually and together, it's always stronger to do so together. I'm the first to acknowledge that. And so, one of the silver linings in my own case is having associations with extraordinary individuals like yourself and others who care about these things. I mean, this is like, you care about the future of humanity, you care about the future of freedom, then guess what? You're willing to take action. So part of having this newer platform, right, this newer means of communicating and collaborating together for a common purpose is, in fact, to do that. I mean, you're taking action in a way that can actually make a real difference, and it's a tangible difference. But it also has to be sustainable. It can't be seat of the pants, and it can't be Rube Goldberg affair. I've seen too many failures as well, and it's for the very few people that I trust, and that is sort of there's still this continuing challenge of trust. How do you establish a trust-based relationship? Not easy at all. Motivations, intentionality on the part of people and organizations. But I think for those that I am aware of, including Barrett Brown and the ordeal that he went through, as well as myself and others, and even others before me. And I've had long talks with Daniel Ellsberg. In fact, I formally interviewed him for the Library of Congress's Veterans History Project as part of my 240 hours of community service, as well as a number of other veterans from World War II to the present day. He's spoken at length to me privately and then on the videotape, as it were, regarding these challenges. And this becomes, it becomes sort of, if necessity is the mother of invention, to coin another phrase that is often used, right? There's something we need to help better society. If necessity is the mother of invention, we have a real necessity here. And the tools we have, I do have the confidence that there are enough people and that appears to be the case with pursuance, who are willing to take a stand and take the steps necessary to build, realizing this is an iterative thing, it doesn't happen all at once, to build the kind of platform that can actually sustain itself and survive and thrive in this age of surveillance, and still allow for what is crucial in terms of organizing, communicating, and taking the necessary action against the assault, literally the assaults on our own individual freedom and liberty. This is, I mean, once taken away, it's very, very difficult to get them back. And so I've decided that I will, in fact, continue to dedicate myself, despite everything that's happened, despite the ordeal that I went through, that I will continue to speak up and speak out. And it's that much stronger and that much more powerful when it's done in concert with others, both directly and indirectly. And so if there's a platform that allows for this to occur in a way that is much more sustainable, allows basically a persistence. Now I use a technical term, but the persistence. So not just a one-off where you organize for a single event, or you organize or resist for something in opposite, basically in reaction to the government. I would actually prefer to see this as a proactive platform that allows for the continuance of in a virtual, especially in a virtual space, but also having impact on the real space of where we live in our lives here on this third rock from the sun. Then that becomes necessary for not just organizing, but also remaining connected. And whether people stay or not, that the platform itself endures, that the platform itself becomes something that's living, and it comes directly from the highest aspirations of who we are, living life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Those extraordinary words from our own, my own country's Declaration of Independence. But that extends to all human beings. There's just too much that, I see. I mean, rumors of war and just what we do to ourselves. It's just, I decry it. And so standing up. I mean, I have a son that just graduated from college last year, right? It was in environmental studies. He wants to take care of the planet. He cares enough about the world that he wants to help take care of the planet. I mean, it is our home I mean, it is. I mean, it's where we live, right? So why wouldn't we want to take care of each other? And so anybody who would dare take that away or wants to exploit, right? I cannot have any quarter for. I personally will not stand for it. And so when it comes to the gross injustices and crimes against humanity, we have to stand up. And so I think what you're alluding to more directly is the need for this kind of organizing platform that allows for this to occur, while it still provides sufficient enough or good enough protection against those who would not want it to live.